So, what if I told you that a single sentence, just one little line spoken inside Japan's parliament, was enough to totally shake up Asia, freeze billion-dollar industries, and push the United States right to the edge of a war that would change life for every single American? It all kicked off just hours after this massive cruise ship, the Adora Mediterranea, left port. Now picture this. It's a floating city, a $400 million marvel carrying over 2,000 Chinese travelers. They're all heading for one of Japan's crown jewels, the beautiful island of Miyako. For these tourists, this was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, paradise. But as the ship got close to the island, something just weird happened. It didn't stop. Nobody was allowed off. The captain just sailed slowly past the island, with all these angry and confused tourists staring from the decks. So what was the reason? It wasn't a storm. It wasn't a mechanical failure. No, it was a direct order from China. And the reason for that order? Well, it all goes back to Japan's brand new prime minister, Sanae Takaichi. Just weeks into her new job, she stood up in parliament and said something that no Japanese leader has even dared to say for decades. That's it. That is the sentence that set this whole firestorm in motion. Existential threat. Now, I know, it might sound like typical political jargon, right? But in Japan's legal system, those two words are anything but typical. And this is the absolute key to understanding everything. This isn't just rhetoric. It's a specific legal trigger. What Takaichi basically did was put a legal framework in place saying, hey, if Taiwan gets attacked, that could be our legal justification to go to war. To really get why this is such a seismic shift, you've got to look at Japan's history. After World War II, its constitution, which was heavily influenced by the U.S., strictly limited its military to just self-defense. That changed a little bit back in 2015 to allow for a collective self-defense, which meant Japan could fight alongside an ally, but only if Japan's very survival was at risk. But here was the catch. Nobody ever actually defined what that meant. Until now. Takaichi just drew that line in the sand, and she drew it right around Taiwan. As you can imagine, China saw this as a direct challenge, a huge, radical shift in the fragile balance of power. And their response? It was immediate, and it was furious. I mean, a senior Chinese diplomat in Osaka did not mince words. He called Japan's new policy suicidal, foolish, and dangerous. These comments were so aggressive that the post was actually deleted later, but you know what? The damage was already done. The message had been sent, loud and clear.
Then, words turned into economic warfare. China played its biggest card, tourism. Almost overnight, a staggering number of Chinese tourists, we're talking over 430,000 of them, canceled their flights to Japan.
And the financial fallout from that was immediate. $500 million in tourism revenue just vanished into thin air. And if this keeps up, Japan is looking at losing billions. Oh, and it did not stop there, not by a long shot. We saw luxury brand stocks like Shiseido and Mitsukoshi completely collapse. China froze academic programs, they canceled concerts, they suspended seafood imports, and they restricted student visas. This was a full-court press designed to inflict as much economic pain as possible. But then the tension moved beyond wallets and diplomacy. China started flexing its muscles, increasing its Coast Guard presence around the disputed Senkaku Islands. And what did Japan do in response? They sped up their plans to deploy missiles on an island incredibly close to Taiwan. All of a sudden, the whole region was filled with more ships, more patrols, and a lot more military hardware. Okay, let's really dive into this, because this is the part where the story stops being about over there and becomes about right here. If this thing escalates into a military conflict, it's not going to be some distant headline. It is going to hit your life, your wallet, and this country in ways most people just aren't ready for. First and foremost, the United States has a defense treaty with Japan. It's ironclad. Takaichi's statement implies that if China attacks Taiwan, Japan might jump in. And if Japan fights, the U.S. is automatically involved. We're talking American soldiers, American bases, American resources, and potentially American casualties, period. Number 2, the global chip shortage. Look at your phone, think about your car, your laptop. Taiwan is the world's factory for the semiconductors inside all of them. If war breaks out, those factories shut down. You think the supply chain issues during the pandemic were bad? This would be so much worse. Prices for pretty much all electronics would go through the roof. Third, the economic shockwaves would be massive. A war would force the U.S. to pour money into military spending, which could easily mean higher taxes for all of us. Wall Street absolutely hates uncertainty, and a conflict like this could wipe trillions from the stock market. And inflation? It would likely spike again, making everything from groceries to gas way more expensive.
Number 4 is regional instability. The entire Indo-Pacific, which is one of the most important trade regions in the world, would be thrown into chaos. This puts business, travel, and the safety of any American citizen living or working in places like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, or the Philippines directly at risk. And finally, number 5, the political firestorm right here at home. A war over Taiwan would instantly become the single biggest political issue in the United States. Elections would revolve around it. The country would be deeply, deeply divided over what to do. These debates would shape American politics for years, maybe decades to come.
So that brings us to right now. The entire world is watching this incredibly high-stakes standoff, where just one wrong move, one miscalculation, could have absolutely catastrophic consequences.
Back in Japan, you might think Prime Minister Takaichi would be feeling the heat, but her position is surprisingly strong. Nearly 70% of the Japanese public actually supports her hardline stance. So even though China wants her to back down, doing that would make her look incredibly weak at home. She's in a political trap.
And you know what? China knows this. They see this as the perfect moment to test Japan's new leader and, maybe more importantly, to test America's loyalty. Is the U.S. really willing to risk a direct war with a nuclear power? For now, the U.S. is maintaining this delicate, strategic silence. It really feels like both sides are just pushing and pulling, waiting to see who's going to blink first.
Which leaves us all with one critical question. If China actually makes a move and invades Taiwan, should the US and Japan step in to defend it and risk a global conflict? Or should they stay neutral to avoid that war? There is no easy answer here, but it's a question we all need to start thinking about.